Hello and welcome to this very short introduction to the Capacity Building in the Field of Youth program, or also known by its acronym CBY. I will mention this acronym quite a few times throughout my presentation, so just for clarity, I want you to explain CBY, what it stands for. My name is Linda Curzola and I'm working as a co-coordinator in Unit A5 for the CBY program at EACEA, the European Executive Agency that is responsible for the implementation of EU programs in the areas of education, audiovisual and also culture. Our program, Capacity Building, is part of what we know as Key Action 2 within the Erasmus Plus family. In this key action, we have mainly projects that are focused on international cooperation or exchange between and among organizations and institutions. So we really have multilateral partnerships with organizations that are very active in the field of youth and that they support the non-formal learning as a main key driver of sustainable socio-economic development. And they want to raise capacity for youth organizations and also youngsters. We don't have per se individuals, or we don't really have mono grants or mono beneficiary grants, but really multi-beneficiary projects. And we can fund through our projects eventually organizations that will get to the youngsters, and there will be, as individuals, ultimately the people benefiting from our funding. But as you can see, it's mainly international cooperations among the different organizations and institutions. As a program, we have quite a few objectives that are outlined also in our program guide. Mainly, we aim at increasing the capacity of the youth organizations that work beyond the non-formal learning. We also want to promote the non-formal learning per se, support the development of youth work, and also enhance the synergies between the formal and non-formal learning or education systems. So we can have universities, but their participation is very limited, and the extent is always well justified in our projects. Mainly we have indeed non-profit organizations, we have to say. When it comes down to the policy part, the main objective is really to sustain the promotion of the EU youth strategies, the 11 youth goals, and also the EU Youth External Action Plan. These objectives are then supported by thematic priorities. So in our portfolio, we have different horizontal policy areas that are identifiable. Mainly, the projects aim at improving the political participation of youngsters in our societies. They want basically to encourage active citizenship, to involve even youngsters with fewer opportunities, mainly coming from vulnerable groups of our societies, to encourage democracy, rule of law, or in some cases even protect the environment, combat climate change, or develop digital skills and entrepreneurial skills. These are just some of the thematic priorities, but more are also in our projects. These priorities are always supported by activities. So in our projects we have quite a few activities that are carried out in order to underpin these objectives and thematic policy priorities, as I mentioned before, and could be, for example, tools or methods of social professional growth for youth workers or even trainers, development of new forms of youth work, and for most of the times we have, I have to say, events, seminars, workshops, exchanges of also group practices or networking activities. We also foresee mobility activities, but these mobilities are quite marginal, let's say, because they are not the main activity per se in the projects. They are underpinning the objectives that are outlined in our projects. Of course, this can vary depending on the regions, geographical partnerships that we might have, but most of the times They are really to test, for example, tools or methods that are developed by the partnership per se. And also, of course, development of new forms of youth work is quite strategic for our projects, and in particular the use of open and flexible learning or virtual cooperation, the open education resources, so the so-called OERs. And in our projects, it's also true that when our coordinators or actually consortia as a whole, they want to tackle, for example, one of the thematic priorities, these are quite well defined. They are always one or two, not more than two. So we can have combinations really between projects that want to support digital skills and entrepreneurship, or for example, political engagement and at the same time gender equality or maybe inclusion, but not more than two. And this is because of really some features that are typical of our projects. First of all, we have a specific consortium configuration starting from the legal entities who are our applicants who can apply, but we can also see them in our projects. We have mainly NGOs, as I said before. So these are non-profit organizations working in the field of youth, or public bodies that are quite known or, let's say, registered, at least legally recognized at the local, regional and national level in a specific context, the geographical context. So we don't have informal networks or indeed natural persons. We can also have public and private organizations such as SMEs or even cooperatives or social enterprises, but these are always participating as partners, not as coordinators. And all these entities are supposed to be legally established in EU member states, in third countries associated to the program, or maybe in third countries not associated to the program. And as regards this last point, it's true that these third countries can vary every year, because according to our program guide, we have regions that can be included or not at different calls that we have. Our calls are annual. And indeed, if you want to know better in which year the type of geographical configurations that we had, or when we have a look at the type of participation for specific countries, we always refer to the last version that is being published for the program guide to see really what regions were eligible. So this is really subject to change every year. And it's also important for you to know that it's also present a list not only of the countries per region, but you can also see which countries, for example, even though they are part of a specific region, can be only partners, or maybe some countries cannot really apply at all because we don't have a cooperation agreement with them in place. So this is more for the legal side, but on top of this, when I was saying we only ask them or we see that they tackle one or two thematic priorities, is because the budget is very limited in a way. We have a maximum contribution usually of 300,000 euros that can go up to 400,000 euros depending always on the region, and it's a co-funding rate of 80% of the total costs. And for the partnerships, can be very small partnerships, or in average, I would say a composition of 7 or 8 partners, but the minimum for sure is 4 organizations from at least 3 legal countries. One of them shall be a EU member state or a third country associated to the program, and at least other 2 shall be 2 entities from 2 different countries, always from the same region. We do not have in our program cross-regional partnerships in this new MFF. So for the counting of the legal entities, we don't take into account affiliated entities, but we only take into or associated partners, but it's really only partners, beneficiaries, or even real legal entities, let's say. and the duration is always minimum 12 months up to 36 months, but in average we have projects around 24 months. So in 24 months you cannot really achieve sometimes something that is more than one or two of the thematic priorities that I was mentioning before. What is important in our projects, it's always evaluated against 4 criteria, let's say, so just for you to know: the relevance, the quality of the project design and implementation, the quality of the partnership and the cooperation agreements, and the impact. What is really important is the first one, the relevance, because in there you need really to see why a proposal has been submitted within our program, why we're tackling a specific problem in a specific region, and we decide to target, for example, a specific vulnerable group of people instead of another. So this is not usually the needs analysis, is something that our beneficiaries have to do beforehand, not really an activity of our projects. And of course, the impact is also very important because in this case, we have to measure the impact of what we fund and how the weighting of the resources are allocated to specific activities that underpin our thematic priorities, policy priorities. Here, I just wanted to give you just a possibility of a flavor or a taste, let's say, to, if you are curious to know more about our program, to see examples, for example, on the Erasmus program results dashboard or platform, the type of projects that we fund, because you can really see abstract, you can see also the type, for example, of partnerships, and also the thematic priorities and activities that are delivered, because you can find even really deliverables there that have been published. And at the same time, also the funding and tender portal, where you can have a look when the call is published, but also there in the past, in the previous calls, the type of projects that have been funded. And as I said, this will be my conclusion. We have regular calls. They are really published every year. So this is a timeline that is indicative and is more or less the same every year. So at the end of November, the call opens with the publication of our program guide, where you can find more concrete real information on the program itself, the activities, eligibility criteria that are indeed considered as important for our program. At the beginning of March, we always start then the evaluation, because usually beginning of March we have the call deadline, and this evaluation process is carried out till the end of July. End of July, beginning of August sometimes. And then we externalize the results of our evaluations, and usually we have projects that start in the autumn. So this is just a general overview, and I hope that actually everything was at your satisfaction, that you are satisfied with what presented. So looking forward to see you maybe in your journey with us with CBY. Thank you very much.